Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Rising Tide Talk. I'm Matt, Roleplay Chat Capelli, and today we're going to be talking all about art and art direction in TTRPGs. I am humbled today to be joined by an industry expert in all things arts for TTRPGs, in layout, art design. They are an actual play performer, game designer, TTRPG creator, and most relevant to today's conversation, they are an art director. And this is something that I find super interesting, and they are a powerhouse in the TTRPG space, having worked with all sorts of companies that we're familiar with. We're talking Hero Forge, we're talking Evil Hat Productions, Hunters Entertainment, and many more. Please join me in welcoming Nala J. Wu to RT Talks. Nala, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hi everyone. My name is Nala or Jay. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm online everywhere at Nala Draws. Thank you so much for the intro. I've been working in the space since 2019 doing freelance, and I've done illustration, layout, art direction, sensitivity consulting, and actual play performance, voice acting. I don't know. I do a lot of stuff, and I'm really excited to be here and share some of my insights, because I think art direction and working with artists in the TTRPG space is a topic that a lot of people have a lot of questions on, and I'm really excited to be here today to help get some of this stuff answered.
Yeah, definitely. And even, if we look at the questions that folks have already prepared for us, there's quite a lot of them in the Q&A section. So Jess has posted the thread where folks who are here now live can ask their questions if you haven't already asked them there. And that's what we're going to use to do the Q&A segment in the second half of today's show. I have some questions prepared already, and we're going to maybe try to fly through those to make sure that we have enough time to address everyone's questions, and even if there are, follow-ups and things. So maybe without further ado, we're going to dive right into it. Today's RT Talks, kind of like all the other ones, is going to be subdivided into different sections. For you, Jay, I have 3 pillars of questions
Okay.
for our organized part. The first pillar is kind of just foundational, the basic stuff. I have a second pillar where we're going to be talking a little bit more about just advice for game designers and TTRPG writers when it comes to them engaging with artists for their work. And then that last section is going to be kind of the flip side, advice for artists and illustrators, selling themselves or finding projects and things like that.
Cool. Sounds good.
So that's kind of how I'm picturing it going. Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds good. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. So maybe we'll start high level from afar. When we say art direction, what do we mean? And especially in the TTRPG context, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a really great question to start with, because the title of art director varies greatly between what industry you're talking about. So, an advertising art director is a very different job, requires a different skill set than an art director for video games or an art director for animation, or like I am, an art director for tabletop RPGs. I would classify it actually most similar to art directors in terms of like book publishing, because a lot of TTRPGs are books. I brought with me 3 of the books that I've worked on art directing, and these things, I'm very proud of them. I'm sorry to everyone who's going to be listening to this on the podcast. You can't see my video, but I have held up from Evil Hat Productions, Apocalypse Keys, Doomsday Delights. This is the stretch goal book. I co-art directed this with Lucia, and this was a really, really fun project to work on. And then I also have with Hunters Entertainment, Kids in Capes. This was one of my more recent projects that I worked on. This one was super cool, and I'll definitely be talking about this later. And then thirdly, and I'm very, very, very excited about this, with Metal Weave Games, I have worked on How to GM Romance. This book's physical copy has not come out yet. This is a like test print that I took a lot of notes on and sent them back before we get this printed for real and in bulk. But this is the first project I've ever worked on that I have my name on the cover, so that's really exciting for me.
Super exciting.
And I'm very, very proud of this book. And again, I'll talk about like all of the things that went into art directing this. But at a basic level, art direction for TTRPGs is a senior level leadership position. You are in a management position, also project manager kind of position, and your job is to sort of be the middleman between anyone else working on the team. So whether that is the lead game designers or the project lead or the person who is trying to make a thing, you are someone who is hired by either a company or an individual person to handle all of the visual asset gathering. So I might be hired by, let's say you, Matt, and you're working on a book and you have a vision, but you might not be an artist yourself. So you hire me, and your job is to tell me this is the kind of vibe I want. Like maybe you're working on a cyberpunk book and you're like, okay, like this is the kind of vibe I want. Here's maybe some inspirations that I really like. Here's your budget. I'm giving you $15,000 and I need you to get me art for a 100-page book. I'm like, all right, great. I got you. So what my job is to go out, find artists who can work in the style that the team has agreed on wanting.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to go out, hire them. Sometimes my job is to write the art contracts that the artists will sign. Other times, the person who hired me already has contracts to sign, but oftentimes the art director gives advice on these art contracts. But we hire artists, I write the briefs, I write a style guide, and we'll go into what all that stuff means. And then I walk the artists through the art making process. So they'll send me work in progresses and I'll give them feedback. Sometimes I show the rest of the team, here's what they're working on. They will give me feedback. I will collate that feedback and then send it all to the artist. So they're only hearing feedback from one person instead of from five. And then basically my job is to go back and forth with them until I have a finished folder of assets that I can hand off to the rest of the team. And then it goes down in the pipeline to whoever's on layout.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the art director oversees layout. Sometimes they don't. It just depends on the scope of the project. Sometimes the art director is the layout artist. So I do both. And so that is something I've done for projects, but sometimes that's two separate jobs.
Yeah.
But that is basically what an art director does. Our job is to find and hire artists and lead them through the art making process and deliver to whoever hired me to do art direction finished assets.
Awesome. That sounds super cool. I'm sure that people listening here would all be like, I wish my project had had the scope to do something like that. I mean, I know I'm thinking it. I'm curious to know as far as like what art direction is,
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel like that scales like up and down
Yeah.
depending on how big a project is? Because I know in our community we have folks who are working on these larger, bigger budget projects with perhaps, some of the bigger role-playing game publishing houses. And then you've
Mm-hmm.
also got people on the other end of that spectrum where we're, self-publishing our own work, or we're going to crowdfunding and
Right,
we're
right.
raising just enough to make to make 100 copies of our game or whatnot. So how do you feel like art direction can scale up and down?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So when we look at like the biggest of big companies, like Wizards of the Coast, they have several art directors. There's
Hmm.
not just one art director overseeing all of D&D. They'll usually have like a senior art director or a art lead, or I forget what the actual title at D&D is called, but they have someone who's like the art director of all the art directors,
Okay.
and they're like the big person in charge, and they sort of set the visual style that the books are going to follow, and they have the last say on everything.
Hmm.
But then there would usually be art directors, like junior art directors or people working under them, who might be handling the day-to-day like feedback processes with all of the artists, and then they deliver those assets upwards to the overseeing art director,
Okay.
who then approves or rejects or whatnot.
Yeah, yeah.
I have not worked at Wizards of the Coast as an art director, so I can't say for sure what their process is, but at a larger scale company, there is often a team of people managing the art direction for things. And then if you scale it down, when I was at Hunters, I worked at Hunters Entertainment for a year. And at Hunters, I was the only art director. And my job was, as I described,
Hmm.
I was in charge. Well, I was hired specifically actually for Kids in Capes. So that was my initial project that I was working on with them. And as my time at the company grew longer, we started having me be in charge of more things. So I was in charge of like social media graphics and helping to create assets myself. Hunters is actually a very, very small team.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, due to the tariffs and the rising costs of everything, myself and three others were actually laid off last summer. So that was kind of sad. But
Yeah.
um the team is very, very small. It always has been small, and we lost like half our staff last summer.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do not work at Hunters anymore, but I got to do a lot of things there, even in the 1 year that I worked there. But that's sort of like a good idea of like a mid-sized company. You might have one or two art directors who work in tandem.
Okay.
And at smaller companies, when you have a smaller team, you have more of a ownership and leadership over the work. Like you really own your work and you have a big influence on things, especially if the team is really, really small.
Hmm.
And then scaling all the way down, I've been hired by like a single person to do art direction on a project that they're trying to do because they want their project to look cool. They want their game to look cool, but they are not an artist. They don't know how to talk to artists. They don't know what they're doing. So they wanted to hire a professional who knows what they're doing to handle all of that. And so that is what an art director can do. So
Yeah.
in that sense, in like a two-person team, it's sort of they will pass off like all of that stuff to me and I'll just handle it for them. But it's a very like intimate, small working thing. And usually me and the person I'm working with get very, very aligned and we can work in tandem in that sense. But
Very
art
cool.
direction it can get very expensive in terms of cost to hire an art director. For me personally, I can't speak to what other art directors do, but I actually offer different tiers that you can hire me for. The lowest of which is simply a consult, where this is the one that is most popular with a lot of like indie game designers,
Hmm.
aka like a single person who's trying to make something. They'll hire me for a 1 hour meeting. They will talk about here's what I want, and in that 1 hour, I will help them give an idea of like here's what you should budget for the kind of art that you want, and here is maybe a short list of artists that I know of that I've worked with before who can deliver the art in the style that you want. And now you have like this knowledge, you have a budget, you have an idea of what to do next, and then
Yeah.
you go do it yourself. And that is something that is way more affordable for a lot of people. And it's something that I personally offer. And I find that for a lot of these smaller projects, that is all they need. Like you don't need to budget more for art direction because you might be commissioning like 5 pieces of art total.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because it's a smaller game. Maybe it's like a 20 page or less game. Like you don't need a lot of art, but a lot of that meeting is also like if you have a very limited budget that you're working with, I can give you an idea of like, okay, if you only have $500, here's what you can get for that. And if you want more, I can help sort of talk clients down or talk them into like, okay, like if you're not willing to put more money to the art, you're not going to be able to get what you want. But maybe I suggest this style or this direction to go in instead, where you can still get enough assets to satisfy you, but it also fits within your budget.
Yeah. It's kind of meeting halfway. That's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Exactly. Because like a lot of clients just don't have the terminology to know what to ask for.
Hmm.
And a lot of people have an idea of what they want, but then I'm like, that's actually a very expensive art style. It's going to cost you XYZ. And they're like, oh, shoot, like I don't have that kind of money. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. Here are other things that would be just as effective,
Awesome.
that would help you save a lot of money in terms of art.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I mean, I think that's a perfect place to segue into advice for game designers, whether they be indie game designers or on small project teams or even bigger project teams. So I
Uh-huh.
have a couple of questions here for you, Jay, about that kind of context. If I'm thinking we can jump to that.
Okay. Sounds good.
If possible, I might skip some of the questions that I've sent to you already or combine them just to make sure that we have enough time
Yeah, that's
to
fine.
just to get to our questions from the audience because there's a lot of really good questions in there that I want us to get to. So maybe I'll start with one with regards just again kind of basic level stuff. If you're looking for art or looking for artists or illustrators for your project, where would you recommend that TTRPG designers kind of go to or look for actual human made art that they can commission for their work?
Right. Yes, if it wasn't clear, I don't touch generated AI art. I personally believe that Gen AI is stinky, and
Mm,
I would rather see a product have no art than use Gen AI assets. I also truly believe that a really strong layout artist and having no art is better than having bad art or generated AI art, because I think layout can sell your game perfectly fine on its own. And
mhm.
maybe I'm biased because I am a layout designer, but I think good graphic design, people underestimate the power of good graphic design. But anyways, where do you find artists? Great question. When I am hiring, I usually put out like a Google form application to basically say like, okay, like send me your name, send me like a portfolio link, and maybe explain like what interests you about this project or whatever. But at the very least, I just ask for portfolio links, and I
Yeah.
I personally use Google Forms because it can collate all that information into a spreadsheet, which makes it really easy for me, especially when I'm getting hundreds of applications for projects. That's a great way if I want to do an open call for artists and for game designers. Like if you don't already have an artist in mind that you want to work with, doing an open call might be the best idea. You can post
Mhm.
something and say like, hey, I'm looking to hire some artists. This is a brief idea of like what the vibe of my project is. Like, oh, I want to make a, I don't know, I want to make a space opera game that is inspired by this media, and this media. And here's 4 visual examples of the kind of art that I'm looking for. Maybe like it's a screenshot from like an animated TV show you really like. Maybe it's another piece of art from another artist who worked on a game that you were inspired by, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I want. And then you
Mhm.
just ask people to like paste their portfolio links below, and then you'll contact people if they're a good fit. My biggest advice when doing this is, unfortunately, depending on what social platform you're using, you're going to get spammed by bots,
Yeah.
which is really unfortunate, which is why I prefer, if I am going to do an open call, to do a Google form, because bots are not going to be filling out a multi-step Google form.
That's
And
smart.
so that's like a great, literally,
It
like,
it's very smart because it helps triage, but you also get some of the information maybe that, the styles or the links to the portfolio.
exactly. And I've sort of made a name for myself in the space as being an art director who works with non mainstream art styles. So I can pretty much say that the Wizards of the Coast house style is a style that is really popular because it's the one that's used in D&D. And
Mhm.
so people, if they see it, this style, by the way, is called painted fantasy realism. So if you're interested in getting art that looks like the art that belongs in Dungeons and Dragons, that style is painted fantasy realism. I could talk for an hour about what fantasy realism means,
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter. That's what it's called if you're looking for the terminology for D&D style. But anyways, I have a reputation for working with non-painted fantasy realism art styles. So I work with a lot of artists who come from comic backgrounds or other like indie sort of art styles, a lot of line art. I work with a lot of artists who utilize line art and cell shading, as well as other like, I love working with comics artists. I think that style is super cool and it's very unique. And if you're working on a game that is definitively not Dungeons and Dragons, it's a really good idea to pick a visual style that is not Dungeons and Dragons. So
Yeah.
if you're working on a game and you're like, I'm not like D&D, and then you have like painted fantasy realism as your art style, people are just going to assume that it's D&D because of that
Totally.
association. Anyways, Google form, get portfolio links, ask people specifically to paste a link, because then when it spits it out into the spreadsheet, you can just click on it, which is really, really nice.
Nice.
I also highly recommend, if anyone's listening to this, please ask people to type their email in twice. Have 2 questions that are the exact same, like what's your email, or like what's a good contact email, and then please retype your email, because the amount of people who will misspell their email
Mm.
is actually ridiculous. And
And then they're gone. Yeah, you've
yeah,
lost
and
that.
then like you can't find them.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, cool. If you don't want to do a Google form, or if you have an idea of like an artist that you like, it doesn't hurt to reach out. Most artists will have linked a portfolio in their bio or in a pinned
Yeah.
post, or it's otherwise very easy to find if they have really strong branding. You can search them, you can find their portfolio, and thus you can find their contact email. It is important when you're reaching out to an artist that you want to work with that you are upfront with as much information as possible. So if I want to hire me as an artist, I would say like, "Hi, my name is Jay. I am working on this kind of project, and I'm wondering if you have availability to do some illustrations for me. This is the timeline. This is my budget, and this is the scope." I highly encourage people to be upfront with their budget,
Mhm.
mostly because it allows the artist to get an idea of like, can they afford you or not? I think the worst feeling as someone who also does illustration is like being reached out to someone where it's very clear that they're trying to shop around for the cheapest person. And if that's what you are doing, then that's fine. Like, be open about that and just saying, like, I'm taking and comparing quotes. I have a very limited budget and, I want to get the most bang for my buck, right? Like that, there's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that, but I'd really appreciate people being more open and transparent about pay rather than trying to be like, let's see who's the cheapest, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you want to get the artist whose work is going to fit your project the best.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But anyways, email them and then they'll respond if they're interested or not. And if you don't hear from someone, you can send a reminder email after like a week and just say like, "Hey, like, I'm still interested in working with you. If you have space in your schedule, let me know if you have any questions about blah blah blah." But if they don't respond to you, then just move on and try to reach out to someone else. Sometimes artists will say like, "I don't have space, but here are other people I recommend." Like, artists love boosting up other people, or they'll know so many more people and be like, "Oh, like, my art style doesn't sound like it fits like what you're going for, but here's my friend who loves drawing horses. I don't draw horses. Here's my friend who loves drawing horses. They would love to draw horses for you." So here's their email.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and you know what, Jay, you kind of answered one of the questions that I was very curious to ask you, and is what do you include when you reach out? So
Yes.
just to repeat it, you said,
Yes. Timeline, scope, budget.
okay, awesome. So let's pencil that in, everybody. Make sure it's locked in.
Yes. And so, very quickly, just to explain, timeline is like, when is the art due? When do you need the art done by? Because that will give the artist a good idea of like, do they have time for this?
Yeah.
It's also a really good idea. And I know this is going to answer other questions that people had in the audience and whatnot. You should be giving your artist as much lead time as possible, because if you need art in 2 weeks, artists are probably going to be charging a rush fee, because that is not a lot of time. And a lot of artists are freelancers. So they're juggling like a bajillion projects at once.
Hmm.
And you coming in being like, "I need something next week," they're going to have to push off all their other work to get your stuff done. And so most artists charge a rush fee for that. So make sure that when you're in your timeline planning phase of your project, that you're giving enough time for art to be made.
What would you say is like a good window? Like we're talking like a month or two, or
Yeah. So I was just
yeah.
about to talk about that. If I'm hiring an artist to do multiple pieces, I budget like at least like 2 to 3 weeks per one thing,
Hmm.
if it is like a full illustration or something. Like, if I'm hiring one person to do one piece of cover art, I might budget 2 months,
Yeah.
because on your end also you need to add buffer time, because things happen, people have emergencies, and you don't want your entire project to be backed up if someone has a health emergency or someone's family member dies, god forbid, or
Hmm.
something else terrible happens. You want to budget that time in, so that your project does not fall quote unquote behind schedule because of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Ideally, if I'm working on a large project, multiple artists all working on multiple pieces, my art creation process is at minimum 3 months, if not more. I've worked on many projects where the artists, like, the entire art making process took maybe half a year. And that's because I'm juggling all these artists and all their schedules as well. Because if I really want to work with someone, but they're not available till next month, I'm like, great, I budgeted in 6 months to do this art. So I can wait for this person to be available in 2 months because I really want their work on this project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's great advice. I think I'm gonna quickly jump ahead now to our advice for artists.
Yeah.
Before I do that, was there any other thoughts, any final thoughts perhaps that you might have? What would be maybe the number one thing you would advise them to do when it comes to working with artists?
I say this with jest, with humor in my tone. I don't think non artists understand how expensive art is. The reason art is expensive is because art is a very technical, developed skill There's a highly specialized skill, specialized trade that
Hmm.
many artists have been working for decades on. People, start drawing as kids and then they never stop. And a lot of us went to art school. This is the thing we studied. So you're not only hiring me to draw you a character sketch, right? But you're also like, maybe I can draw your thing in an hour. And you're like, okay, well, why do I have to pay you $200 for this thing that took you an hour? Well, the reason I can draw your thing in an hour is because I've been practicing for like 20 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very technical skill, definitely.
And not only that, like depending on how much or how little information the artist is being given in their brief, which again, we'll talk about what a brief is, but depending on how much or how little information the artist is being given, sometimes they're also doing character design work. Sometimes they are trying to bring to life your vision, and maybe whoever wrote this brief is like just okay at writing. So you're like, okay, I kind of have a very blurry vision of kind of like what you want,
Hmm.
and I'll do some thumbnails and see if we can work together to make this happen. But the artist does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of making a good composition and making the colors shine and having all of these things. And often it's a very like back and forth conversation with the person who hired you, because you're like, okay, like what colors do you want to use? The client's like, oh, I really want these two colors. And the artist is kind of like on their own. They're like, that's kind of ugly, but okay, I'll do what you want because you're paying me. But they might be like, okay, here's what you wanted, but here's another idea that I think will work better because XYZ, XYZ. And then the client's like, maybe I want the uglier version. Like they want what they want, and that's fine. But they might see the artist's idea and say, actually, that looks really nice. I want that one. But I highly recommend, number one, to ask the artist, what do you think? What do you like better? Because if you are an artist, you will know the clients are always going to pick your least favorite option. It always happens. So clients, it's worth it to ask your artist, like, what do you think? Like, what do you like? And you don't have to listen to them, but it's worth hearing their opinion because you're hiring them for their expertise. The second thing
Hmm.
is that commercial licenses are really important to negotiate because a lot of clients don't understand what commercial licenses are. So if I am commissioning something for personal use, that might be like, hey, Sasha, I want you to draw my D&D character, and this is a private commission. This might be like, oh, I want you to, draw my friend's character and I'll give it as a gift to them. That's a private commission. However, if I'm making a game and I'm going to publish it, that is no longer personal use. That becomes commercial use. And so there are many different kinds of commercial licenses. A lot of clients who are newer, they think they need a full copyright transfer. What a full copyright transfer is the artist assigns copyright to the client, and they basically transfer the ownership of all of those rights to the client. And then the client can do whatever they want. A lot of clients think that they need a full copyright transfer in order to get their art for the thing because they're worried about ownership and whatnot. That is not true. You do not need a full copyright transfer to publish work.
Hmm.
What I highly recommend that clients go for is something that I call either a limited commercial license or an exclusive, full exclusivity commercial license. The reason why full copyright transfers are so expensive is because the artist like can't control what you choose to do with the art after that. So it is very expensive, usually like triple the amount of the base price that it would cost. So like if I'm doing a cover for you and base cost, I charge you $1,500 for a full copyright transfer, you're looking at least what, 5K. Like it's a lot more money.
And just to break down the technical terms here, this full copyright transfer means the art becomes the ownership of the
The
game
client.
designer, of the client, and
Yes.
it can never be used in any other context except for the cover of the game, for instance.
Yeah. So let's say, Matt, you hire me to do a cover and you pay for a full copyright transfer. That means you can go make merch of it. You can print it on cards. You can print it on giant poster advertisements, whatnot. And you don't have to pay me another cent, which is why it's so expensive because the artist needs to be compensated for any future profit that you might make off of it, especially if you're making merch out of it.
Totally.
And full copyright transfers might be the right move for you as a client if you do plan on making merch and you don't want to deal with royalties, because royalties is a whole nother shindig of annoying paperwork. So like there are instances where full copyright transfers are necessary. Also, artists, if you're working for larger companies, they often require require a full copyright transfer. Just make sure that you are being paid for that. But a lot of these larger companies do have the budget and will pay for full copyright transfers.
Mm-hmm.
Moving down that list, right? Like I talk a lot of clients down to one of the lower tiers. My basic commercial license that I offer gives you the rights to publish. Sometimes and most of the time I throw in first publishing rights for free. Like usually I should charge more for that, but that basically means that the art that I do for you, you get to be the first person who publishes it. Like I'm not going to relicense it to someone else whose product is going to come out before yours. So that's called first publishing rights. But I maintain the copyright and I can relicense it at a later time. But this basic commercial license lets you put it in your book, whether that's in print or digital. And I also throw in the use for marketing. So you can use my art in promo, advertisement, whatnot for your Kickstarter or for your products. So say we work on Silly Goose Game and I draw a goose for you and you can use it to advertise Silly Goose Game, but you would not be able to use it to advertise Silly Goose Game 2, like a sequel, because the rights were only for that one project. And then that also does not include merchandise rights. A lot of game designers aren't making merch, so you don't need to buy merch rights unless you actually plan on making merch. So I often tell clients like, okay, we can renegotiate for merch later. And most
Yeah.
people never come back looking for merch because like no one makes it, so it's fine, it's whatever. But that's my basic commercial license. I, as the artist, maintain copyright, so again, I can relicense it later, and then I also get to use it for my own self promotion. So like when Portfolio Day, the hashtag Portfolio Day event comes around, I can use it
Yeah.
to promote my own services as an illustrator. I can use it in my portfolio, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Cool.
Maybe you're not chill with it being relicensed. So you might want an exclusive license. So the next step up is what is called either a limited or a full exclusivity license. A limited exclusivity license is everything I just said, but also I can't relicense it for a period of time after your thing comes out. So maybe I finished the art now, it's April, your thing comes out in June. Then starting in June, there's 6 months where I can't relicense it. But after that 6 months is up, then I can relicense. A very common time periods for limited exclusivity is 6 months, 1 year, and 5 years. And that, if clients want exclusivity, usually people are okay with that because for me personally as an artist, no one's out here relicensing my work. Like I don't really
Yeah.
get anyone who wants to relicense things. So it's basically the same thing as paying for a full exclusivity license, except it's not. And then, as mentioned, full exclusivity license means that I can't relicense it ever, but I do maintain copyright. So I can still use it, whatever. And then you still have to come back around and renegotiate for merch or renegotiate to have it appear in another work
Yeah.
of
All that
yours.
other stuff. Awesome.
Yeah. Kind of long winded, but it's really important that people understand this.
No, I definitely. I think having all of these kinds of all the technical jargon helps to have the important
Yeah.
conversations, right?
Hmm,
When
hmm.
you're dealing with folks for your projects. So I'm going to take a quick look at some of the questions from the community because I think most of them were from the artist's perspective. And please correct me if I'm wrong, somebody.
I will look at these. So I have looked at the questions already. It might be faster if I just go through and answer them really fast. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
We'll rapid fire through.
Yeah. Okay. So I got a question. Someone was asking, do you feel you need a degree to pursue art direction? I don't think you need a degree. As an artist, I've worked with art directors who are not artists themselves. There also is not really a like degree for art direction. Most art directors were artists first. So do I think you need a BFA? No. Do I think you need to be an artist to be an art director? No, but I do think artists make better art directors. And I think that's one of my best selling points as a creative is that I am an artist and an art director. I know how to talk to artists because I've been on both sides of the table here. I know how to advocate for artists, and I also know how to advocate for everyone else on the team to make sure that everyone's getting a fair deal with this contract that we're making. I'm a big proponent of fair pay. And that's something that I feel I can speak to because I've been both the illustrator being hired and the art director hiring. But no, I don't think you need a degree. Do you make a style guide? Yes, you do make a style guide. One of my favorite parts about art direction, I really love working with diverse artists, and I love bringing to life people's vision and being able to successfully translate what a game designer wants and delivering them things that make them really happy and make them see like, oh my God, my game's finally coming together. Like that's the best feeling in the world. Like working on games is like glorified group projects in school, except people actually pull their own weight, which is wild. Like, I don't know about y'all. I was the kid doing all the work in group projects. And I felt very much like a project manager back then. And here I am as a project manager now. I love working with different artists and I love being someone who is in a position where I can advocate for and hire marginalized people. That's really important to me. One of my goals in this space has always been to increase the positive representation of marginalized groups in media. And being the art director, I have a say in what kind of art goes in the books. And if I'm in that room and making those decisions, I can say, I want this art of this person to be a person of color and to make those decisions with intention helps me achieve my dream and my goal of seeing more representation and more diversity in our games, because everyone deserves to play TTRPGs and everyone deserves to see themselves seen in these books, because when we are essentially playing pretend and we can imagine anything, why do we keep defaulting to the same vision? And so if I can
Hmm.
include art in books to help players imagine something different, imagine something more, why not do that? So I would say that's my favorite part.
Awesome.
This person says, any tips on how to convey your vision as an art director into something actually actionable for the artists you hire on? Yes. So I mentioned earlier with a bit of humor that some people are bad at writing art briefs. So
Mm.
that's another skill that art directors kind of need to have, is that you need to have good writing skills, because if you're writing a brief and you're creating this idea of like what you want this person to draw, you have to be good at writing so that you can communicate that to your artist. Sometimes art briefs are written, some of them are just visuals, some of them are chicken scratch sketch that someone made and they're like, make this but make it look better. Like I've gotten all kinds of briefs as an illustrator, but I recommend being very clear in your brief and having all the most important information outlined. Someone said, is art direction for a TTRPG like art direction for any book? I would say, yeah, it's the most similar to art direction for like magazines or books publishing. I would say it's the most similar to that. The next most similar thing would probably be card art, like Magic the Gathering, Riftbound, Lorcana, etc. And then once you get farther away from that, it gets more different. Do you have tips for any creators who want to set the art direction for their game? I would say gather a mood board is probably like the easiest thing that you can do. Pull together things that you like, right? If you have an idea and a vision for your game, the best thing you can do for an artist who is probably someone who loves visual examples is to pull visual examples. Like maybe you take a screenshot of your favorite TV show and you're like, I love the lighting in this scene. This is the kind of lighting I want for the piece that you're making. And I like this character. Like, obviously, I'm not stealing this character, but I like maybe the vibe of the outfit that this character's wearing, but I want him to be wearing purple instead. And instead of like a brocade jacket, maybe I want this pattern. You send another image, a stock photo of something else. Gathering those sort of visual examples will be really helpful for communicating to artists, especially if you're not the best writer. What kind of communication happens between you and the people conceptualizing a project? How much creative vision comes from you and how much from those you're working with? This is a really great question. It really depends. So sometimes people hire artists because they don't really know what they want, and you hire someone who is a designer and they can design a character for you. You're like, all
Mm.
right, so my game, I'm gonna have like 6 playbooks and I want like an image for each playbook art. So maybe one of them is like the protector character, and you're just like, all I know is that they're the protector. I have no ideas or no visual whatever. When you are hiring artists, you need to hire a character designer, because I think being a good artist and being a good designer are two separate skills.
Mm.
Some of the most incredible artists I've met are terrible designers. Like they can't make stuff up. They are just very good at drawing something that already exists, a design that already exists. And then similarly, some designers are not very good at finished art. Like those are your concept artists, right? This is not to say that concept artists are not good at illustration, but it is two different skill sets. So depending on how much creative control you want, if you are leaving it all up to the artist, make sure that you're hiring someone that has design chops.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jay.
No
Is
worries.
that something that you can kind of suss out when you're looking at a portfolio, or is that something that warrants being asked like kind of straight up to somebody when you're hiring them for a project?
I think to a trained eye, you can tell,
Yeah.
especially if someone has a character design portfolio. If they're posting tons of unique character designs, most likely they're a character designer. But if you're someone that is drawing very generically, or you are only drawing fan art of character designs that already exist, but you don't create anything original on your own, if you see a portfolio that looks like that, that again, not to say that's a bad artist, they might be very technically skilled. So if you bring character design to them, they'll knock that out of the park.
Hmm.
But you might not want to hire that person to design completely from the ground up for you.
Okay. Awesome.
Does
Awesome.
that answer your question or your follow up?
Yeah. 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 No, that's good. Thank you.
No worries. Just to finish this out, it's usually a collaboration though. So the artist
Yeah.
will give you sketches, you pick one, then they'll give you maybe tight lines, or they'll start like an underpainting, they'll do color comps, something, and then you like each step they should be checking in with you and there should be a dialogue back and forth. I would just make sure that you're giving all of your feedback together, not one thing at a time. It's really annoying to be given like one piece of feedback, the artist goes and fixes that, and then you're like, actually here's another thing. Like give all of your thoughts together so the artist can go fix all of it, because a lot of artists have limitations on how many revisions you get.
Mm,
And so, or how many rounds of revisions. Actually, that's the key here, is how many rounds of revisions. So you want to give all of your thoughts together so that they can go do a round of revisions and come back to you. And hopefully it passes. But then if you have something else, then hopefully it's a different something else. But yeah, it's definitely a very collaborative process. Someone asked, what's the most expensive mistake you've made and what has changed in your process after? In this chat, I did say I would need to think about this because I'm not sure if I can answer this without breaking NDAs, but I have made mistakes. Luckily, nothing major. More often than not, as an art director, it's more of an issue with an artist I've hired not being able to deliver. And then
mm,
either we've lost out on money and time trying to work with them and they're not delivering what I needed. So then I need to like just cut that contract and hire someone else. And now we're backed up because now we're waiting for this piece. And that whatever 3-month timeline that I had said at the beginning is now pushed back because I'm hiring someone new. So we either have to pay the rush fees to get it done on the original timeline, or we're stretching it out and we're waiting for one more piece of art, which can get annoying. But I would definitely say mistakes are very expensive. So make sure that you are a good communicator. Let's see. How do you give a book a cohesive style? That is a style guide. A style guide essentially is a document you give your artists, and it tells them like this is the style of the book. Usually, there's visual examples and stuff like that, but it'll help a team of artists who might have very, very different styles to all work in a style that looks cohesive. How many artists do you think are necessary for projects of different scales? I think if you're working on something really small, I would recommend hiring one artist to do all of the stuff because then you get a cohesive vision. But if you're working on larger projects where you need like more than 5 pieces of art, for one person to complete 20 pieces of art, that's going to take a long time. So if you need the stuff faster, I would recommend splitting it up amongst a couple artists so that you can overall get it done faster. But it just depends. And again, that's something that an art director can work with you on to figure out like if this is your hard cutoff date for getting this book shipped, here's what we can do. I've seen postings calling for art directors, design managers, project coordinators with a lot of overlapping duties. Are there differences or are these interchangeable titles? These are not interchangeable titles. Actually, an art director is not a project manager. I know I joked about that earlier, but a project manager is a different job that I am not. Or at the very least, you are not paying me to be a project manager. So please don't schlep extra work onto your art director. That is not their job. Project managers are in charge of the timeline. Their job is to keep everyone on track. The art director should not be reminding everyone else to get their work done. The project manager is in charge of that. And they're in charge of sort of driving the bus that everyone is on, including the lead game designers. Your project manager, if you hire one, is in charge of everyone and making sure that everyone stays on track and on time. That is a separate job. You can hire an art director who will do that, but like my project management should start and end with just my artists. My job is to keep my
Yeah.
artists in line.
I was gonna say it's kind of like project management, but within the context of the art.
The art. Like I should not be checking up on the writers or the editors to figure
Yeah.
out when's that happening.
Or like the
That is
media
not my
team or
job.
whatever. Yeah.
Design managers is kind of a nebulous term. I have not seen a design manager position in TTRPGs, or have not, or at least have not worked on a team with a specific design manager. I would say design manager, from what it sounds like maybe an overseeing visual director. So someone who might be in charge of like the art direction and the layout and all of the branding. That kind of like bleeds into marketing a little bit, just to make sure your project
Mhm.
has a cohesive design overall. I would say that might be what a design manager does. Moving down here, we are almost done. Do you always have to work as an artist first before becoming an art director? No, but I highly recommend it. Are there other ways to become an art director without direct artist experience? Yes. Okay, so you can become an art director without being an artist. I think there are people who are very effective art directors without having been artists. I do think being an artist makes you a better art director. And as an illustrator, I have found it is easiest to work with art directors who are also artists themselves. That is not to say that you will be bad at it. I just think that your communication skills have to be that much better. I have worked with way too many art directors who are not artists, who kind of just fell into the art director position because, I don't know, John and his buddies wanted to make a game, and John's buddy Joe is the main writer. John likes art, so was like, I'll be the art director. And
Mhm.
he goes to hire people and doesn't really know what he's doing, but he likes art. And like it's fine. I would just say that if you're not an artist and you want to do art direction, if you don't have a basic grasp on art concepts, like you don't know what contrast is, you don't know like for print things, the difference between RGB and CMYK, these are things that you probably should know before you become an art director. How do you prepare a PDF for print? How do you, all of these things I feel like are things that art directors should know, or at the very least, you learn these things so that you can communicate to the artist that you're
Yeah.
hiring.
So does it kind of, from the outside, as somebody who's not an artist, or maybe I'm trying my best. We're getting there. As somebody who doesn't know any of the technical elements of
Yeah.
art, I suppose that's kind of the crux, right? One of the components that makes a good art director is being able to communicate these more technical pieces to an artist.
Right. At the very least, be specific in what you want, right? Like
Hmm.
like a bad art director might see a sketch from an artist and be like, "I don't like that." And the artist is like, "Okay, what do you not like about it?" And they're like, "Well, I don't like the vibe."
Yeah.
And then the artist is like, "Okay, what does that mean?" Like the vibe. Like a better example of how to be specific might be, "I don't like this angle. I would like it if the angle was more of a worm's eye view looking up at this character, because we're supposed to be scared of this character. And that is the vibe that I want." You can talk about emotions. You can talk about, I highly, again, always recommend sending mood boards or visual examples from other things. Like
Hmm.
you, like it is totally okay if you are not an artist to find pieces of art that you like and say, this is the vibe I want, but like make it your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
not be just straight up stealing
Yeah.
like the compositions of other pieces, but be specific in your feedback. And you have to be a really good communicator, a good writer, and also learn some art terms so that you understand like contrast and saturation and color theory and things like that. You don't
Hmm.
need like professional knowledge of it, but like just knowing what words mean will be really helpful. If you can tell the artist, can you boost the saturation, rather than like, the colors look dull, can you make them better? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. It's kind of like a shared language. Yeah, let's go back. Let's go back to
Yes.
where we
We're
what about
almost done.
next.
So, how do you approach artists that are not familiar or have never worked in the TTRPG space? Great question. If you have an artist who does not work in TTRPGs, but you really want to hire them, still in your cold email, say, like, I am working on a tabletop RPG. Here's an example of what that is. And if they're still curious, you can say like it's like books publishing basically, but you can send examples. Most people have heard of D&D, so you can say it's like that. That's a usually pretty good one-to-one comparison. So people are like, oh, it's not a board game, it's not a card game, it's a book. It's a book with art in it.
Hmm.
And again, just be very clear in what you want. I've hired a lot of animators and, like I said, comic book artists and concept artists who have never worked in TTRPGs. I've hired people from those three fields and found a pretty successful transition, or they were able to understand. But it's very important that if you're looking for illustration, that you hire illustrators. Don't hire concept artists who are not illustrators. Like, don't hire animators who are not illustrators. Like, some animators are only good at animating. Like, they're not gonna be good at illustrating. So just make sure that the person you're hiring already works in the kind of style that you want. That is like a really key takeaway I want people to have. Last question. How should a game designer approach a profit share type deal with an artist if they don't have the funds available? All right. Great question. So my first project that I worked in tabletop was a royalty split profit model where I was not paid up front, and based on the sales, royalties were split amongst everyone who worked on it. This is a really great way to get into the industry. If there's any artists listening, really great way to get into the industry. However, you are not going to be able to find many seasoned artists who are willing to work for royalty profit share. There are many artists in this server, Rising Tide, who are newer in their journeys and might be interested in that. A lot of my first published credits come from royalty split models. I do not work for royalty split anymore. I require payment up front. I don't work for what's called like spec money. Like, I'm not going to work with the promise that I might make money unless it's a really big project or you're a really big name who is known for selling your product.
Hmm.
Like, only then would I consider working on a project like that, especially if it's way more collaborative and I have a way more say in what I'm doing. And I also know that I am going to make money on it through royalties. But my advice would be to seek out newer artists or people who don't have as many published credits, especially if this is one of your first games as well. I think it is important to, like Rising Tides, right? Like, work with people who might not have, had credits or had a published opportunities yet, because everyone has to have their first project somewhere. But don't be disappointed when the big artist that you really admire is not going to be willing to work for profit share.
Yeah, we speaking of profit share, there was a previous episode of RT Talks, it must have been a year and a half ago now,
Mm.
where we had Lila join us, aka Jar of Eyes, and
Oh,
Lila,
Lila. I love
yeah,
Lila. We're actually literally about to do a convention panel this weekend in local to Somerville, Massachusetts about
awesome.
designing games as a group project.
Awesome.
Anyways, please continue. I love Lila.
Yeah, yeah. So part of that conversation was about profit sharing and like kind of there was like an article that Lila wrote that basically explained, how to approach profit sharing and not just with artists, but with maybe sharing with writers and project managers and layout artists and et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
we'll post that for you to go look into as well, because 100%, like you're saying, Jay, this is a great thing for folks to explore doing, especially if you're all kind of coming in at the ground level and everyone's okay with this project, maybe not
Right.
making all that much money, but you're in it to work together and experience making a TTRPG
Right.
as a
It's called
group.
proof of concept, right? Like, as soon as you
Yeah.
get a published credit under your belt, you're more likely to be hired and known for the things that you're trying to do. And I highly recommend doing collaborative projects for profit share when you are newer to the industry, just to get that experience of doing a group project and getting a thing out the door. Like I'd rather people just like make their thing happen and say like, I published a game. I am a published game designer,
Hmm.
and then you can move on to the next thing.
Yeah,
Because
that's
a
it.
lot of people get really caught up in like, oh, like I don't have money, I can't hire anything, blah 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 blah. But again, like, That's why like crowdfunders exist, and that's why there's a lot of really good alternatives to, if you can't hire an artist and you don't want to use Gen AI. I wrote a document resource that is available for free to the community. It is called Alternatives for Generative AI Art. It won a Crit Award last year for innovation.
Hey, awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. But it's a really good resource for if you can't pay for original art, but you also are against AI and you want art and visuals. There are so many resources for finding assets that are going to be
Hmm.
way cheaper than getting original art.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well done. You flew through all those questions and you provided fantastic answers, in my opinion. So thank you so much for being here, Jay, and sharing your wisdom and sharing your thoughts. This has been a fantastic conversation. Before we say goodbye, I want to throw the microphone back over to you one last time for any, parting words of wisdom that you might want to share or final considerations with regards to art direction. And then once you've given us that, if you can also remind the people listening, whether that be live or in the future, where they can find you, where they can go to hire you, where they can go to follow you on socials, all that good stuff.
Yeah, of course. In terms of parting advice, I would say that art direction is, and I've said this before in this call, but art direction's really important to be a good communicator and to have good writing skills. Like there's a lot of other skills besides just being, a solid artist that makes you a better art director. I think you have to also have people management skills. And that's why I love art direction, because like I love illustration, I love doing all that, but I also have very strong people management skills and the communication skills required to be in charge of other artists and to manage those timelines and to be that
Hmm.
project manager. Sometimes you might try art direction and you decide, actually, I really hate the responsibility and stress of managing this. I'd rather just, be an illustrator. And that's totally fine. Art direction is not an easy job. It is something that you have to have very specific skill sets in a variety of different hard and soft skills. But it's something that I truly love. I really love doing it. And I love getting to work with all these incredible creators, and uh, collaboration projects bring me so much joy. And I hope you've learned something so that you can do that too. In terms of where to find me, again, I am at Nala Draws everywhere online. That's NALADRAWS. You can find my portfolio on naladraws.com. I do illustration, art direction, sensitivity consulting, layout design. I do some branding work, some like social graphics work, hand drawn title design. I do a lot of random stuff. My graphic design portfolio can be found at naladraws.com/GD, like the letters G as in God and D as in dog. Military alphabet who? Anyway, if you want to hire me for art direction, an art direction consult, or anything else, you can email me any inquiries at naladraws@gmail.com. This was really great. If you have any questions, you are free to email me or tag me. I am on Blue Sky mostly. I kind of use Instagram. I kind of use TikTok, but I'm mostly on Blue Sky. You can tag me at any time, ask me questions, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But if you want dedicated time to talk through your project, you can hire me for an art direction consult. And to do that, just send me an email. Again, that's knowledgedraws@gmail.com. Yeah, I hope you learned something. If you're confused about anything, you can ask questions in this chat, and again, I'll try to get to them when I can.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And thank you so much, Matt, for having me here. Jess for wrangling us, and
Yeah.
Ty for the editing job that you're going to be doing. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you again.
And sorry, one more thing. You guys should totally go buy How to GM Romance.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
This is on Metal Weave Games. It is a project that I'm very, very proud of. The PDF is out. The book will be going to print very shortly. In this, it includes system agnostic mechanics that you can include in any game to turn your games into the dating sim of your dreams. There's also lots of essays, tooltips, safety tools for how to run romance in games in a way that is safe and engaging and fun. But I don't want to say most importantly, but all of the art in this book was arranged in rainbow order to celebrate the diversity of love. It is a concept that I pitched to our project leads, And I'm very excited to bring this to life. Unlike most TTRPG books, the art in here I commissioned completely separately from all of the text. I just wanted artists who wanted to help celebrate the diversity of love, drawing their favorite rom-com tropes, their OCs, whatever. I let artists pitch whatever they wanted to draw. Not only that, we negotiated a really fantastic contract with the publisher, Metal Weave Games. After our publisher breaks even, every single person who worked on this book, our team is taking 60% of the profits. After Metal Weave Games breaks even on what it costs to make this, our team is taking 60%.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
This is unheard of in our industry. And again, like myself, Friday, Kiana, we really stand for paying people a living wage. Not only did we pay everyone who worked on this book above industry standard rates, they are also getting royalties on this forever. So please support this incredible team.
Totally.
There's so many really cool, very queer art in this book. This one's for the girls and the gays. The girls, the gays, the theys, all the queer people. This one's for us. We deserve to have our stories be told. And I'm so, so, so proud of this. So please
Yeah,
support us
as you should be.
and buy this book.
Is that available now?
Yes, it is available as a PDF right now. You can get the PDF, and our physical book, like I said, is going to print very soon. And if you buy the physical copy, I'm pretty sure you get a PDF for free. There's, even if you don't care about games at all, if you don't care about running romance, there is incredible art in here, y'all, from really incredible artists. And I wanted to treat it like a zine where you can just buy this for the art. And if you don't care about any of the writing, that's fine. I mean, the writing is really cool too, but you can buy this just for the art.
Awesome.
It looks pretty. Everything is, it's a rainbow gradient in here,
Yeah, very cool.
and some gorgeous art in here. So yeah, that's my little plug. So go buy it.
Please. Yeah, no, absolutely. So everybody listening, please go check out How to GM Romance, and also check out all the other awesome links to, consider getting yourself an art director. And if you're going to, it might as well be Jay. After all of these awesome tidbits of information, I'm convinced. If I ever get myself to a stage where I'm working on a project with a budget for an art director, it's gonna be you.
Hire me. I'd love to work with y'all.
So yeah, definitely go check out all that material. And while you're at it, please don't forget to come follow the TTRPG Rising Tide wherever you are on socials,
Yes.
and to spread the good word of these awesome RT talks. They're created by the community for the community so that we can all grow as creators in the TTRPG space. I'm Matt at roll_play_chat on all socials. You can find me wherever you do all of that good stuff. And as always, this has been another RT Talks. Thank you for being here. We'll be another one next month with a topic to be determined and a guest to be determined. So stay tuned for more news on that. And remember, folks, that a rising tide lifts all boats. See you next time.
Bye.